You ever come home from deployment, jet-lagged and half-dreaming, and see a birthday party in your own house thrown by people you've never seen before? Yeah, that happened. I dropped my bag in the driveway and stared through the window, blinking at the sight of balloons, cake, and a bunch of strangers in my kitchen like they'd always belonged there. For a second I thought, hell, maybe I walked up to the wrong address. But nope, there were my name and their names, side by side on the mailbox. Welcome home, right? You know what I mean. Turns out, while I was overseas serving, my HOA had temporarily reassigned my property to some random family. Every question I asked brought me a new find in the mail. Every time I stood my ground, another agency showed up at my door. Like I was supposed to take the hint and disappear. Let me back up a sec. Have you ever come home and found a family of complete strangers eating breakfast on your own porch furniture? Not squatters, not criminals, just a family displaced by a hurricane, apparently, but still, my outdoor set, my view, my coffee mug sitting right in front of the lady who looked up at me like I was trespassing. I could hear my mom's voice message in my head about how empty the house felt without me. Suddenly, it wasn't empty at all. Nora Whitman, the HOA president, waltzed out the door with a power bun and enough paperwork to choke a donkey. "Sergeant Shaw, you're back earlier than expected," she said. "Not welcome back. Not thanks for your service. Just cool bureaucratic dismissal." She handed me a stack of documents, including a property management agreement with a signature that was supposed to be mine, dated during my processing week at Fort Bragg. According to that, someone with my military power of attorney had let the HOA turn my house into emergency housing while I was gone. The family at my table were FEMA placements, and my signature, real or not, was the key that I asked to see the real document. Nora just gave me a business card for some lawyer I'd never hired, out in Virginia. The whole thing had a weird, rehearsed quality, like she'd been practicing for weeks. Meanwhile, the family, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson and their kids, acted like they'd been living here forever. The pool was sparkling, the lawn was trimmed better than I'd ever managed, and even my mailbox looked like it belonged in a model home ad. All courtesy of federal relief funds. When I asked Nora how long they'd be here, she told me placements were reviewed monthly and a new family would rotate in soon. And get this, she told me I couldn't go inside my own house to check my belongings because of federal privacy protections. Yeah, that's a real thing. Apparently. So here I was, locked out of my own house by paperwork I never signed, forced to stand in my own driveway while strangers laughed in my pool, and a woman who used to scold me about fence heights was now running a full-scale housing operation from my living room. But here's the twist. I went to the county courthouse and found out my deed was still clean. No liens, no agreements on record, just my name, just like I left it. But $8,000 in property maintenance liens had been slapped on my place during deployment, all tied to mysterious code violations that I started watching the house from across the street, just observing. The Petersons moved in and out like they owned the place. Groceries were delivered. A white sedan showed up with supplies and cleaning products, all under the banner of federal support. I called that lawyer, Patricia Morrison, left a message, then looked her up online. She had a slick website, real credentials, and a niche practice in military deployment property management. There was even a case study matching my story almost exactly. They specialized in protecting military homes by managing them in absentia after disasters. Just sign here, soldier, and we'll handle everything. Except I'd never signed. Finally, Patricia Morrison called back. She told me, straight up, that my authorization for all this was part of my Fort Bragg deployment processing. When I pressed for the original documents, she said those were part of classified military legal files and hung up. Around this time, my old buddy Derek got involved. He's the kind of guy who sees patterns and networks in his sleep. Within hours, he had the paperwork, the business licenses, and digital footprints all mapped out. Everything pointed to a company formed right around my deployment window, like someone knew I'd be gone and set up the scam just for me. Derek called in reinforcements. Lopez, our legal mind. Big G, the guy you want in your corner when things go sideways. And Doc, calm and methodical as ever. We met at the most American diner you can imagine, spreading out every piece of evidence over sticky tables and weak coffee. We had a plan, Visible, legal, professional, but not backing down an inch. When we rolled up to my house in convoy, the Petersons packed their car, and Mrs. Henderson next door watched like she was seeing a UFO landing. Lopez planted a sign in my yard. Property temporarily secured by rightful owner. Neighbors started to pay attention. Phones came out. The game changed. Nora showed up, cautious now, keeping her distance. Lopez handed her his legal aid card and calmly stated that we'd be maintaining security on the premises. The Petersons, for all their confusion, weren't the villains here. They were victims too. But the tension in the air was thick. You could cut it with a knife. It didn't take long for the harassment to escalate. The next morning, my truck was gone, towed for violating HOA rules that didn't exist when I bought the house. The towing company was tied to the same business district as Nora's lawyer. More fines, more threats, more agencies came knocking, all with paperwork designed to exhaust and intimidate. That's when the twist hit. At a backyard legal rights meeting Lopez organized, half barbecue, half town hall, a former HOA vice president pulled us aside. He had proof, emails, documents, deployment schedules, and plans targeting veteran homeowners for exactly this kind of scam. Other neighbors shared similar stories: parking fines for work vans, garden citations, even threats for laundry lines. A local title agent revealed she'd been one of their first victims, forced into silence by threats to her license. Then came the full court press, federal inspectors, disaster relief compliance checks, and the county fire marshal, all on my property in the same week. The inspector general got a call from Lopez. Turns out, the supposed federal contractors monitoring my house were just private security guys on fake assignments. Big G recognized one of them, a fellow veteran from Afghanistan, who had no idea he'd been pulled into a con targeting military families. And suddenly, everything flipped. The FBI called. They'd been tracking a fraud ring abusing disaster relief programs and military powers of attorney for years. My case was the missing puzzle piece. When they finally came down, they came down hard: federal arrests, asset seizures, and all those family members who'd been running this show got swept up together. Nora was led away in handcuffs. The Petersons moved out, still confused but grateful. Neighbors voted in a new HOA president. Peace slowly returned to my block. 6 weeks later, the local news ran the story: a multi-million-dollar fraud ring, dozens of military families targeted, over $2 million in relief funds stolen. But the real win wasn't the headlines or the arrests. It was the sight of that flag going up on my porch again, the breakfast table finally serving its purpose, neighbors waving without fear of a citation. Lopez went back to legal aid work. Derek helped the neighborhood beef up security. Big G started his own consulting firm for veterans. Doc volunteered for Veteran Fraud Prevention.me. I sat on that porch and realized that sometimes the fight at home is every bit as real as the one overseas. But here's what matters. If you're still watching, I want to know, what would you have done if it was your house? What part hit you hardest? Drop your thoughts below. Stories like this, they're not rare. They're just rarely told. Porch lights on. Eyes open. Let's get louder than the scammers. Stay tuned.